The alarm bells rang through the research ship Mercury Dawn like angry metal birds. Dr. Alan Brooks dropped his coffee mug and ran toward the bridge. The hot liquid splashed across his lab coat, but he did not care. Emergency calls in deep space usually meant bad news. Captain Lisa Martinez stood at the main screen, her face tight with worry. The blue glow from the display made everyone look sick. Behind her, the crew worked at their stations with quick, nervous fingers. "What do we have?" Alan asked, breathing hard from his run. "Distress signal from Kythera 7, Lisa said without turning around. "Automated probe picked it up 3 hours ago. Looks like a crashed ship in the jungle." Alan knew about Kythera 7. Every scientist in this part of space knew about it. The planet was covered in thick green forests and filled with dangerous animals. The worst ones were called Vorthak. They stood 8 feet tall on 6 powerful legs. Their claws could cut through steel. Their teeth could crush bones. Most people stayed far away from Kythera 7. "Any signs of life?" Alan asked. "Unknown. The signal is weak and keeps cutting out. But someone or something is definitely down there." Commander Jake Sullivan walked onto the bridge. His uniform was perfect as always. His face showed no fear, but Alan could see worry in his eyes. Jake had led many rescue missions. He knew when things looked bad. "Captain, my team is ready," Jake said. "We can launch in 30 minutes. Lisa nodded slowly. The Galactic Council warned all ships about this planet. They said the Vorthak are too dangerous. They kill anything that moves. "Since when do we listen to politicians about rescue work?" Jake asked with a small smile. Alan stepped forward. "I want to go with the team." Both Lisa and Jake looked at him with surprise. Alan was a scientist, not a soldier. He studied alien plants and animals from the safety of his laboratory. He had never been on a dangerous planet before. "Alan, this is not a research trip," Lisa said gently. "If there are survivors down there, they might be hurt. If there are Vorthak around, everyone will be in danger." "That is exactly why you need me," Alan said. "If we meet any Vorthak, you will need someone who understands alien behavior. I have studied them for years. I know how they hunt, how they move, how they think." Jake looked at Lisa. Lisa looked at the screen showing the jungle planet below. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but you follow Jake's orders completely. No arguments, no delays. If he says run, you run." 1 hour later, their small shuttle broke through the thick clouds around Kythera 7. The jungle spread out below them like a green ocean. Trees grew so tall and thick that sunlight barely reached the ground. Somewhere in that maze of plants and shadows, something was waiting for them. Security Chief Nicole Harper sat across from Alan, checking her weapons. She was smaller than Jake, but just as tough. Her dark eyes missed nothing. She had saved more lives than anyone else on the ship. "First time on a predator planet?" she asked Alan. "Yes," he admitted. "Stay close to us. Do not touch anything. Do not make loud noises. Most importantly, do not run unless we tell you to run. Running makes you look like prey." The shuttle landed in a small clearing near the crash site. The air outside was thick and hot. Strange sounds came from the jungle around them. Birds called from the treetops. Things moved in the bushes. The smell of rotting plants filled their noses. They found the crashed ship after walking for 20 minutes. It was split in half like a broken egg. Metal pieces lay scattered around the clearing. Burn marks covered the trees nearby. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. Jake held up his hand and everyone stopped. He listened carefully to the jungle sounds. Then he pointed toward the larger half of the ship. The inside of the ship was dark and twisted. Emergency lights flickered on and off. Alan saw strange writing on the walls. This was definitely a Vorthak ship. The smell was different from human ships. It reminded him of wild animals and strange spices. They found the first body in what looked like the control room. The Vorthak lay twisted among broken machines. Its 6 legs were bent at wrong angles. Dark blood covered the floor around it. Alan had seen pictures of Vorthak before, but seeing one in person was different. Even dead, it looked dangerous. Nicole found the second body near the back of the ship. This one was smaller, probably female. Her claws were still extended like she had been fighting something when she died. Then they heard the sounds. Soft crying noises came from deeper in the ship. They sounded sad and scared. Jake motioned for everyone to be quiet. They moved carefully toward the sounds. In the cargo area behind a wall of twisted metal, they found them. 3 small Vorthak cubs huddled together in the corner. They were about the size of large dogs, but their claws and teeth were already sharp. Their golden eyes were wide with fear. When they saw the humans, the cubs cried louder. The sounds they made broke Alan's heart. They were calling for their parents, but their parents would never answer. "They are just babies," Nicole whispered. The smallest cub tried to crawl closer to its siblings. Alan could see wounds on its legs. All three cubs looked thin and weak. They had not eaten in days. Jake spoke into his radio. "Captain, we have 3 Vorthak cubs. They are alive but hurt. No adult survivors. Cubs?" Lisa's voice crackled through the radio. "Are you sure they are not dangerous?" Alan looked at the frightened little creatures. Their cries filled the broken ship with sadness. "They are scared children," he said into the radio. "Their parents are dead. They need help." "Bring them up," Lisa ordered. "But be careful. Even young Vorthak have claws." Getting the cubs onto the shuttle was not easy. Every time the humans came close, the cubs cried louder and tried to hide. Finally, Nicole used a sleep gas to calm them down. They carried the sleeping cubs to the shuttle in special cages. As they flew back to the Mercury Dawn, Alan watched the cubs through the cage bars. Even sleeping, they whimpered softly. He wondered what would happen to them now. The Galactic Council usually sent alien orphans to research centers. Scientists would study them and learn about their species. But looking at these scared babies, Alan hoped there might be another way. They deserved more than life in a laboratory. They deserved a chance to be happy again. The jungle of Cathara 7 disappeared below them as they climbed toward space. In the cages, the cubs slept on, dreaming of mothers who would never come home. The medical bay on the Mercury Dawn looked like a small hospital. White walls, bright lights, and the smell of cleaning chemicals filled the air. Dr. Karen Lewis worked carefully on the largest cub, cleaning its wounds with gentle hands. She had been a veterinarian on Earth before joining the space program. She knew how to help hurt animals, even alien ones. But these cubs were not getting better. They lay in their special cage, making soft crying sounds that never stopped. The sounds were different from any Earth animal Karen had ever heard. They were deeper, more musical, and incredibly sad. "They will not eat," Karen told Alan as he watched through the glass wall. "I have tried every kind of food the computer says Vorthak eat. They just look at it and cry harder." Alan nodded, worried. "How long can they survive without food?" "Not long. Maybe 2 more days before they get too weak. They are drinking a little water, but not enough." Karen looked tired. She had been working with the cubs for 6 hours straight. The cubs huddled together in their cage like scared children. The largest one, with darker fur, kept trying to protect the other 2. When Karen came near with food or medicine, it would bare its small teeth and hiss. The middle-sized cub just stared at the walls with empty eyes. The smallest one barely moved at all. Captain Lisa came to check on them. She stood beside Alan, watching the cubs through the glass. "The Galactic Council wants to know our plans for them," she said quietly. "What kind of plans?" Alan asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "There is a research station 3 days from here. They study alien behavior and biology. The Council thinks the cubs would be valuable for their work." Alan felt angry. "These are not research subjects. They are children who just lost their parents." "I know," Lisa said, "but we are just one ship. We do not have the resources to care for 3 growing Vorthak. When they get bigger, they will be dangerous. Each adult Vorthak is stronger than 10 humans." Through the glass, they watched the cubs cry. The sound made everyone in the room feel sad and helpless. Human children cried too, but somehow these alien cries seemed to reach deeper into their hearts. "There has to be another way," Alan said. That evening, Petty Officer Danny Clark finished his shift in the communications room. He was young, maybe 25, with brown hair and kind eyes. He had grown up on a farm in Kansas, far from cities and spaceships. His job was to monitor radio signals and send messages to other ships. Danny had heard about the cubs from other crew members. Everyone was talking about the sad sounds coming from the medical bay. As he walked down the hallway, he could hear them crying. The sound made him think of the baby animals he had cared for back home. He stopped outside the medical bay and looked through the window. The cubs looked so small and scared. Their golden eyes were wet with tears. Danny remembered finding orphaned kittens in his barn when he was 12. They had cried just like this until his mother taught him how to calm them. "Poor little guys," he whispered to himself. Dr. Lewis came out of the medical bay looking frustrated. "Oh, hello, Danny. Did you need something?" "I heard about the cubs. Are they okay?" Karen shook her head. They will not eat or sleep properly. I have tried everything. They just keep crying for their parents. Danny looked at the cubs again. Can I try something? Try what? You are not a doctor or an animal expert. No, but I grew up around animals. Sometimes they just need someone to sit with them quietly. Someone who is not trying to fix them or study them. Karen looked doubtful. These are not farm animals, Danny. They are alien predators. They are also scared babies, Danny said gently. May I please try? What could it hurt? After talking to Captain Lisa and getting permission, Danny entered the medical bay alone. He moved very slowly and quietly. The cubs watched him with suspicious eyes. When he got too close to their cage, they hissed and showed their small fangs. Danny sat down on the floor about 6 feet away from the cage. He did not try to touch them or talk to them. He just sat there calmly like he used to do with frightened horses back home. The cubs kept crying, but they also watched him. Danny closed his eyes and started humming an old song his grandmother used to sing. It was a simple melody about birds and sunshine and peaceful meadows. After a few minutes, something strange happened. The crying got quieter. Danny kept humming, not opening his eyes. He heard small movements in the cage, like the cubs were shifting position. When he finally opened his eyes, all 3 cubs were staring at him. They were still sad, but they had stopped crying. The smallest one had moved closer to the bars of the cage. Well, hello there, Danny said softly. The smallest cub tilted its head, like it was trying to understand his words. Its golden eyes were large and curious. Danny stayed for an hour just sitting and humming. When he got up to leave, the cubs started crying again. But it was different now. They were not just crying from fear and sadness. They were crying because they did not want him to go. The next morning, word spread through the ship about Danny's success. Everyone wanted to know how he had calmed the cubs when the doctors could not. Dr. Brooks came to the medical bay to study what had happened. There must be some scientific explanation, Brooks said, scanning Danny with different instruments. Maybe humans produce a pheromone that calms Vorthak. Or perhaps there is something special about your voice frequency. But the instruments showed nothing unusual about Danny. His voice was normal. His body chemistry was normal. There was no scientific reason why the cubs responded to him differently than anyone else. Danny did not care about the science. He just knew the cubs needed comfort, and somehow he could give it to them. He started visiting them twice a day during his breaks from work. Each time he would sit quietly and hum or talk to them in a gentle voice. Slowly, the cubs began to trust him. The largest one stopped hissing when Danny came near. The middle one would watch him with interested eyes instead of empty stares. The smallest one actually reached one tiny paw through the bars toward Danny's hand. Dr. Lewis was amazed when the cubs finally started eating. It happened on Danny's 3rd day of visits. While he sat nearby humming, the smallest cub picked up a piece of food and ate it. The other 2 cubs watched, then started eating too. I do not understand it, Lewis told Captain Lisa. Medically, there is no reason this should work, but somehow, that young man has become their emotional anchor. Lisa watched through the window as Danny sat with the cubs. They were still in their cage, but they looked calmer and healthier. Their eyes were brighter. Their fur was cleaner because they had started grooming themselves again. The research station is expecting us in 2 days, Lisa said. Captain, Lewis said quietly, I do not think we should separate them from Danny. Look at them. They are finally healing. Lisa knew Lewis was right, but she also knew the rules. Alien creatures belong to the Galactic Council, not to individual humans. No matter how much the cubs liked Danny, they could not stay on the Mercury Dawn forever. But as she watched the young man gently talking to 3 alien babies who hung on his every word, Lisa began to wonder if there might be another way. Maybe the rules needed to change. Maybe some bonds were more important than regulations. In the cage, the smallest cub had fallen asleep near the bars, as close to Danny as it could get. Its tiny paws twitched as it dreamed, but it was not crying anymore. For the first time since the rescue, it looked peaceful. Danny smiled and kept humming his grandmother's lullaby. He did not know it yet, but he was about to change the future for himself and 3 little aliens who had already decided he was family. News about Danny and the cubs spread through the Mercury Dawn like wildfire. Crew members found excuses to walk past the medical bay just to see the young man sitting calmly with 3 alien predators. Some thought it was amazing. Others thought it was dangerous. Everyone agreed it was unusual. Dr. Brooks spent hours studying video recordings of Danny's visits with the cubs. He measured everything he could think of: sound waves, body temperature, heart rate, brain activity. He even tested the air around Danny for special chemicals, but nothing explained why the cubs responded to him differently than anyone else. There has to be a scientific reason, Brooks muttered to himself for the 100th time. He was frustrated because science was supposed to have answers for everything. Captain Lisa watched the recordings too, but she was thinking about different things. She thought about regulations and rules. She thought about the Galactic Council and what they would say. Most of all, she thought about 3 baby aliens who had found comfort with a farm boy from Kansas. Meanwhile, Danny continued his visits. Each day the cubs seemed a little happier and healthier. They had names now, though Danny had not told anyone about them yet. The largest cub with the darkest fur and brightest golden eyes, he called Rex, the middle one, who was always watching and thinking, he called Luna. The smallest, who had been the first to trust him, he called Pip. The cubs were learning too. They learned that when Danny arrived, good things happened. Food tasted better. The scary medical machines seemed less frightening. The loneliness went away for a while. Rex had become protective of Danny, just like he protected his siblings. When other humans came into the medical bay, Rex would position himself between them and Danny. His message was clear: this human belongs to us. Luna was the smartest of the 3. She watched everything Danny did and tried to copy him. When Danny sat cross-legged, Luna sat the same way. When Danny tilted his head while thinking, Luna tilted hers too. It was like she was studying him as much as Dr. Brooks was. Pip was the most affectionate. She had figured out that if she made certain soft sounds, Danny would hum back to her. They had developed their own little conversation in music and gentle noises. Sometimes other crew members would stop and listen to their strange duet. On Danny's 5th day of visits, something important happened. Dr. Lewis had finished checking the cubs' health when Rex suddenly made a sound none of them had heard before. It was not a cry or a hiss. It was almost like a purr, but deeper and more musical. "What was that?" Lewis asked, looking startled. Danny smiled. "He is happy. That is the sound they make when they feel safe and content." "How do you know that?" "They have been making little versions of it when I hum to them. Today was the first time it was loud enough for you to hear." Lewis stared at the cubs with new understanding. They were not just eating and sleeping better. They were actually happy. In all her years as a veterinarian, she had learned that happy animals healed faster than sad ones. These cubs were proving that rule worked for aliens too. But their time was running out. The research station was only 1 day away now. Captain Lisa had already sent a message confirming their arrival. The scientists there were excited about studying live Vorthak cubs. They had prepared special cages and observation rooms. That evening, Danny made a decision that would change everything. Instead of leaving after his usual hour with the cubs, he stayed. He brought blankets and a pillow from his quarters. When Dr. Lewis found him setting up a bed next to the cubs' cage, she was shocked. "Danny, what are you doing?" "They get scared at night. They have nightmares and wake up crying. I thought maybe if I stayed with them, they might sleep better." "You cannot sleep in the medical bay. There are rules about that. Dr. Lewis, tomorrow we give them to strangers who will put them in laboratory cages. Tonight might be the last time they feel safe. Please just let me try." Lewis looked at the cubs, who were watching Danny with hopeful eyes. They seemed to understand that something important was happening. She thought about calling Captain Lisa, but then she made her own decision. "One night," she said, "but if anything goes wrong, you call me immediately." Danny spread his blankets on the floor next to the cage. The cubs pressed themselves against the bars closest to him. When he lay down, they lay down too. When he closed his eyes, they watched him protectively. For the first time since the rescue, the cubs slept through the entire night without crying once. Danny woke up several times to check on them, and each time he found all 3 cubs sleeping peacefully, their small bodies rising and falling with calm breaths. Dr. Lewis found them in the morning still sleeping. Rex had one paw stretched through the bars, almost touching Danny's hand. Luna was curled up like a cat, and Pip was making soft, happy sounds in her sleep. "Well," Lewis said quietly to herself, "I have never seen anything like this." The news of Danny's successful night with the cubs reached Captain Lisa within an hour. She came to the medical bay to see for herself. What she found made her question everything she thought she knew about humans and aliens. Danny was awake now, sitting up in his makeshift bed. The cubs were awake too, eating their breakfast with good appetites. But the most amazing thing was how they acted as a group. When Danny moved, the cubs moved to keep him in sight. When he spoke, they listened with complete attention. When he smiled, they made their happy purring sounds. "Danny," Lisa said carefully, "I need to ask you something important. What exactly do you think is happening here?" Danny thought for a moment before answering. "I think they have decided I am part of their family. Where I come from, we had a saying. Animals choose their people as much as people choose their animals. These cubs have chosen me. But they are not pets, Danny. They are intelligent alien beings. When they grow up, they will be 8 feet tall and incredibly strong. I know that. But right now, they are scared children who lost their parents. They need someone to care about them, not study them." Dr. Brooks, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "Captain, I have been researching Vorthak's social behavior." Danny might be more right than he knows. Lisa turned to him. "Explain." "Vorthak cubs imprint on their pack leader through something called the Great Bonding. It usually happens with their parents, but it can happen with anyone who cares for them during their early months. Once the bond is formed, it lasts for life." "Are you saying these cubs have bonded with Danny?" "Look at the evidence. They eat when he is near. They sleep when he sleeps. They position themselves to protect him from perceived threats. Rex even shows dominance behavior toward other humans who get too close to Danny." Lisa felt a headache coming on. "What does this mean for our mission to deliver them to the research station?" Brooks looked at the cubs, who were now playing gently with each other while staying close to Danny. "It means separating them from Danny could cause serious psychological damage. It would be like taking children away from their father." The word father hung in the air like a challenge. Danny looked up at Captain Lisa with hope and determination in his eyes. The cubs seemed to sense the tension in the room. They moved closer to Danny and made soft questioning sounds. Lisa realized she was facing a decision that would affect the rest of several lives. The safe choice was to follow orders and deliver the cubs to the research station. The right choice might be something completely different. "We arrive at the station in 6 hours," she said finally. "I need time to think." As she left the medical bay, Lisa could hear Danny humming to the cubs and their happy purring in response. The sound followed her down the hallway like a gentle reminder that some things were more important than regulations. Behind her, 3 alien cubs who had chosen their human, and 1 human who had chosen them back, waited to see what their future would hold. The Mercury dawn approached the research station like a ship sailing toward an uncertain fate. Through the main window, the station looked cold and mechanical. It was all straight lines and blinking lights, nothing like the warm chaos of a family ship. Danny stood in the observation deck, watching their destination grow larger, while 3 young Vorthak pressed against his legs. Rex, Luna, and Pip had been allowed out of their cage for the first time since the rescue. Dr. Lewis had finally agreed they were healthy enough, and Danny had convinced Captain Lisa that keeping them locked up was making them sad. Now they followed Danny everywhere like devoted shadows. The cubs had grown noticeably in just 1 week. Rex was already the size of a medium dog, his muscles developing under his dark fur. Luna had learned to open simple doors with her clever paws. Pip, still the smallest, had discovered she could make different sounds to communicate specific needs. When she was hungry, she made 1 sound. When she wanted attention, she made another. When she was scared, she made a 3rd sound that always brought Danny running. "They are so much bigger," said Nicole Harper, watching from across the observation deck. She had become fond of the cubs, though she tried not to show it. "In a few months, they will be too big for most rooms on the ship." Danny knew she was right. Vorthak adults were enormous, but he also knew something Nicole did not understand yet. "They will never hurt anyone they consider family," he said quietly. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have been reading about their culture. Dr. Brooks shared his research with me. Vorthak are not mindless predators. They are highly social beings with complex emotions and strong family bonds. They only become dangerous when they feel threatened or when they are protecting their pack." Rex looked up at Danny and made a questioning sound. He always seemed to know when Danny was worried about something. Danny scratched behind Rex's ears, and the young Vorthak leaned into the touch with contentment. Captain Lisa's voice came over the ship's communication system. "All hands prepare for docking. We will arrive at Research Station Omega 7 in 30 minutes. Danny felt his heart sink. 30 minutes. That was all the time he had left with the cubs before they were taken away to live in laboratory cages. He had spent the last 2 days trying to think of a solution, but nothing seemed possible. The Galactic Council had made their decision. The cubs belonged to science now, but Danny had made a decision too. He was not going to give up without a fight. "Lisa," he said into his communicator, "I need to speak with you before we dock." 20 minutes later, Danny stood in Captain Lisa's office with Rex, Luna, and Pip beside him. The cubs had refused to stay in the medical bay without Danny, and he had refused to leave them behind. Lisa looked at the unusual group with tired eyes. "Danny, I know what you are going to ask, and the answer is no. I cannot refuse orders from the Galactic Council." "What if the orders are wrong?" Danny asked. "What if taking these cubs away from their chosen family is actually cruel and harmful?" "I am not a politician or a judge, Danny. I am just a ship captain. I follow the rules." Rex moved closer to Danny's side and made a low sound that was almost like a growl, not threatening but protective. Luna sat down and wrapped her tail around Danny's leg. Pip climbed into Danny's arms and curled up like a cat. "Look at them," Danny said desperately. "Look how they act with me. This is not just friendship or training. This is family. They have chosen me as their pack leader, and I have accepted the responsibility." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Request a formal hearing with the Galactic Council. Let me present evidence that these cubs should stay with me instead of going to a research facility." Lisa laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Danny, you are a communications officer with no formal training in xenobiology. The council will never listen to you. Then let Dr. Brooks help me. He has all the scientific evidence. He knows I'm right about the bonding. And what would you do with 3 growing Vorthak? Where would you live? How would you support them? When they become adults, they will need huge amounts of food and space." Danny had thought about all these questions. The Galactic Navy has liaison officers who work with different alien species. They travel between worlds, helping with communication and cultural exchange. I could apply for that program. The cubs could be ambassadors for their people. For the first time, Lisa looked interested instead of just tired. "You have really thought this through. Captain, I grew up on a farm. I know what it means to care for animals that depend on you. I know the work and sacrifice involved. But I also know these cubs are not just animals. They are intelligent beings who deserve a chance at happiness, not just existence in a laboratory." The ship's docking alarm sounded. They were at the research station. In a few minutes, scientists would come aboard expecting to collect 3 young Vorthak for their studies. Lisa made her decision. "I am going to do something that might end my career," she said. "I am going to request an emergency hearing with the Galactic Council. But Danny, you have to understand the risk. If the Council says no, these cubs will still end up in that research facility, and you might face charges for interfering with official business." "I understand," Danny said. "But doing nothing guarantees they will spend their lives in cages. At least this way they have a chance." Lisa activated her communication console and sent a priority message to the Galactic Council headquarters. While they waited for a response, Danny sat on the floor with the cubs. Rex lay down beside him, resting his large head on Danny's lap. Luna curled up against his back. Pip made her happy purring sound and fell asleep in his arms. "They trust you completely," Lisa observed. "Trust goes both ways," Danny replied. "They trust me to protect them. I trust them to never hurt anyone I care about." The response from the Galactic Council came faster than expected. A senior representative would meet with them in 2 hours to review the situation. The research station had been notified of the delay, and they were not happy about it. Dr. Brooks arrived in Lisa's office with his arms full of research files and data tablets. "I brought everything I could find about Vorthak social behavior and bonding rituals," he said excitedly. "If we are going to convince the Council, we need solid scientific evidence. What are our chances?" Danny asked. Brooks looked at him seriously. "Honestly, not good. The Council usually follows established procedures. Taking alien cubs away from research facilities to give them to individual humans is not something they do. But it has never been tried before either," Lisa pointed out. "Maybe it is time for new procedures." Over the next hour, they prepared their case. Brooks organized his scientific data. Lisa prepared legal arguments about the rights of bonded beings. Danny practiced explaining his connection with the cubs in simple, clear language. The cubs seemed to understand that something important was happening. They stayed close to Danny but remained calm and well-behaved. When strangers came into the room, they did not hiss or show aggression. They simply moved protectively around Danny while watching the newcomers with intelligent eyes. "They are perfect ambassadors for their species," Brooks said admiringly. "Look how they behave. Protective but not aggressive. Alert but not fearful. They show all the best qualities of Vorthak nature." Finally, the time came to meet with the council representative. As they walked toward the conference room, Danny felt nervous but determined. Rex, Luna, and Pip walked beside him with quiet dignity, as if they understood their future was about to be decided. "Whatever happens," Danny whispered to them, "I want you to know that you are the best family I could have asked for." Rex looked up at him and made a soft sound that somehow conveyed understanding, love, and trust all at once. Luna brushed against his hand with her head. Pip made her happy purring sound. They were ready to fight for their right to stay together. They were ready to change the galaxy's mind about what family could mean. They were ready to prove that love was stronger than regulations. The conference room doors opened and their future waited on the other side. The Galactic Council meeting room was bigger than Danny had expected. Representatives from 12 different species sat around a curved table that seemed to stretch forever. The lighting was bright and cold, making everything look official and intimidating. Danny walked to the center of the room with Rex, Luna, and Pip beside him, trying not to show how nervous he felt. The council speaker was a tall, thin being with blue skin and 4 arms. Her voice was musical but stern when she spoke. "This hearing concerns the custody of 3 Vorthak cubs currently aboard the vessel Mercury Dawn. The cubs are scheduled for transfer to Research Station Omega-7 for scientific study. Petty Officer Daniel Clark has requested permission to serve as their guardian instead." Danny stood straighter when he heard his name. Captain Lisa and Dr. Brooks sat at a smaller table nearby, ready to help with their testimony. The cubs pressed close to Danny's legs, sensing the importance of the moment. "Before we begin," the speaker continued, "I must note that this request is highly unusual. The Galactic Council does not typically assign alien beings to individual humans for private custody." A representative from the research station stood up. Dr. Martin Hayes was a thin man with cold eyes and an impatient voice. "Council Speaker, these cubs represent a unique opportunity to study Vorthak behavior and biology. We have prepared extensive facilities for their care and observation. Giving them to an untrained human would be a waste of valuable scientific resources." "Thank you, Dr. Hayes," the speaker said. "Petty Officer Clark, you may present your case." Danny's mouth felt dry, but he began to speak. "Council Speaker, honored representatives, my name is Danny Clark. 7 days ago, I met 3 scared baby aliens who had just lost their parents. They were crying and would not eat or sleep. Everyone tried to help them, but nothing worked until I sat with them quietly and sang them a lullaby." He paused and looked down at Rex, Luna, and Pip. They looked back at him with trust and love in their golden eyes. "I am not a scientist or a doctor. I grew up on a farm in Kansas. But I know what it means when a frightened animal chooses to trust you. These cubs have not just accepted me as their caregiver. According to Dr. Brooks's research, they have bonded with me as their pack leader according to their own species' social structure." Dr. Brooks stood up and activated a large screen. "If I may, Council Speaker, I would like to present scientific evidence supporting Mr. Clark's claim." The screen showed video recordings of Danny with the cubs over the past week. In the first clips, the cubs were thin, scared, and crying constantly. As the videos progressed, they showed the cubs becoming healthier, happier, and more confident. "As you can see," Brooks explained, "the cubs' behavior changed dramatically once they bonded with Mr. Clark. They eat regularly, sleep peacefully, and show normal play behavior. Most importantly, they have developed the social skills necessary for healthy adult relationships." The most impressive video showed Danny working at his communication station while the cubs played quietly nearby. When an alarm sounded, the cubs immediately moved to protective positions around Danny, but they did not panic or become aggressive. They stayed calm because their pack leader was calm. "This demonstrates advanced social reasoning," Brooks continued. "These cubs are not just pets or research subjects. They are intelligent beings capable of complex emotional bonds and cultural learning." Dr. Hayes interrupted. "This is all very touching, But it proves nothing about the cubs' scientific value. In a research facility, we could study their development, their abilities, their potential contributions to our understanding of predator species. What would their lives be like in your facility? Danny asked. They would have comfortable cages, regular meals, medical care, and stimulating environments for observation. Would they have family? Would they have someone who loves them? Dr. Hayes looked confused by the question. They would have professional caregivers and researchers who understand their needs. That is not the same thing, Danny said firmly. These cubs do not need professional caregivers. They need family. They need someone who cares about their happiness, not just their scientific value. Suddenly, a new voice spoke from the back of the room. The human speaks truth. Everyone turned to see a massive figure entering the chamber. It was a Vorthak adult, standing 8 feet tall on 6 powerful legs. The representatives gasped and some reached for security buttons, but the Vorthak raised one clawed hand in a peaceful gesture. "I am Council Speaker Thex of the Vorthak Assembly," the alien said in a deep, rumbling voice. "I came as soon as I heard about these orphaned cubs." The cubs had noticed Thex immediately. They made excited sounds and moved toward him, but they stayed close to Danny. Rex positioned himself between Danny and the adult Vorthak, not threatening but protective. Thex observed this behavior with interest. "Fascinating. The cubs recognize me as their species, but they do not abandon their chosen pack leader. This is exactly as it should be according to our ancient traditions." "Speaker Thex," the council speaker said nervously, "we were not expecting Vorthak representation at this hearing." "Nor was I expecting to learn that Vorthak cubs had survived a crash and formed bonds with an alien species," Thex replied. "But here we are, and these cubs have chosen their path according to our oldest laws." Thex walked slowly toward Danny and the cubs. Rex tensed but did not retreat. Luna moved closer to Danny's side. Pip made a questioning sound. "In Vorthak culture," Thex explained to the council, "cubs who lose their birth pack may choose a new pack leader through a ritual called the Joining of Paths. Once this choice is made, it cannot be undone without causing great harm to all involved. Are you saying these cubs have already chosen Mr. Clark as their pack leader?" the council speaker asked. "Look with your eyes," Thex said. "The cubs show all the signs. They eat when he eats, sleep when he sleeps, position themselves to protect him from threats. They have completed the joining of paths without even knowing its name." Dr. Hayes stood up again. "This is unscientific superstition. These are just behavioral responses to feeding and care." Thex fixed him with a stare that made the human doctor step back. "You know nothing of Vorthak ways. These cubs have chosen their family. To separate them now would be a cruelty your species should be ashamed of." The council speaker looked around the room uncertainly. "This is unprecedented. We have no procedures for this situation." "Then perhaps it is time to create new procedures," Captain Lisa said, standing up. The Galactic Council was formed to promote cooperation and understanding between species. These cubs represent a perfect opportunity to build bridges between humans and Vorthak. Thex nodded approvingly. "The human captain speaks wisdom. These cubs could serve as ambassadors, teaching both our species about the others. They could travel between worlds, showing that different species can form lasting bonds." "What exactly are you proposing?" the council speaker asked. Danny stepped forward, feeling braver now that he had Thex's support. "I propose to become the first human Vorthak cultural liaison. I would work with the Galactic Navy, traveling to different worlds to promote understanding between our species. Rex, Luna, and Pip would come with me as living proof that friendship can cross any boundary. And when they become full adults," Dr. Hayes demanded, "they will be dangerous predators. They will be my family," Danny said simply, "and I will be theirs. Family protects family no matter what species they are." Thex walked closer to Danny and lowered his massive head until they were at eye level. "Human Daniel Clark, do you accept the responsibility of leading a Vorthak pack? Do you understand that their lives and happiness will depend on your wisdom and care?" Danny looked into Thex's ancient, intelligent eyes. "I accept the responsibility. I will protect them, teach them, and love them for as long as I live." "And do you accept that they will grow large and strong, that others may fear them, that your life will be forever changed by this bond?" "I accept all of it." Thex straightened up and turned to the council. "By the ancient laws of my people, this human has proven himself worthy. The cubs have chosen well. I formally request that the Galactic Council recognize this bonding and create the position of Human Vorthak Cultural Liaison. The council speaker looked around the room at her fellow representatives. Some looked worried, others curious. A few seemed excited by the possibility of something new and unprecedented. "We will need time to consider this request," she said finally. "Time is something we do not have much of," Thex replied. "The cubs grow larger each day. Soon it will be difficult for them to live on a ship. They need to know their future is secure." Danny felt Rex pressing against his leg and looked down to see all 3 cubs watching him with complete trust. Whatever the council decided, he knew he had already made his choice. These cubs were his family now, and he would fight for them until his last breath. "Council speaker," he said, "while you deliberate, may I demonstrate something?" She nodded, curious. Danny sat down on the floor and began humming the same lullaby he had sung on that first day. The cubs immediately settled around him, making their happy purring sounds. Rex laid his head in Danny's lap. Luna curled up against his back. Pip climbed into his arms and closed her eyes contentedly. The room fell silent except for the gentle sounds of a human lullaby and